The first presentation, first to kick us off, will be Dr. Lynne Keevers, as I said, from the University of Wollongong. Lynne, your presentation will be loaded. It's all yours.
Good afternoon. The project that I'm going to be talking to you about today, Transnational Teaching Teams, Professional Development for Quality Enhancement of Learning and Teaching, is an international collaboration between 5 universities, funded by the OLT, and it's a work in progress, so I'm really keen to get your feedback. Universities have a lot riding on transnational education, and the infrastructure and support, as you can see, has not always kept pace with the rapid growth in the programs. For instance, in Australia in 2011, there were at least 900 programs and 94,000 students studying offshore. The rapid growth in transnational programs has created many opportunities for nations seeking to build their capacities, for universities, for staff and for student learning. However, there's also lots of challenges. Teaching transnationally is complex, involving diverse people, culture, roles, programs and modes of delivery. This anagram of our project title alludes to some of the challenges for subject or course coordinators and program conveners. And they were a particular focus of our project. Some of those tensions include the lack of face-to-face interaction, the tension between equivalence on the one hand and the need for localisation and contextualisation on the other, the inequalities in power relations, and the need to ensure quality standards across partner institutions. Yet, despite these complexities, when the transnational academics in our study were asked about the professional development they'd experienced in relation to transnational education, most of them said, none. I haven't had any. So this project addresses a gap in current practice by focusing attention on teaching and learning practice development with transnational teaching teams. The research methodology used practice theory and multi-site participatory action research. Because practice is difficult to capture with a single method, we used multiple interpretive methods, including surveys of students and staff and interviews with both those groups, observations of teaching and learning practices across sites, participatory action learning with transnational teaching teams, and reflexive discussions with those teams. So what did our data tell us? In relation to the survey, we analysed our data to see if there were differing perceptions as well as commonalities between the teaching team members at different sites in relation to their experience of transnational education and in relation to how they identified their professional development needs. Manover and Roy Bargman's step-down F-tests indicated that there was statistically significant differences in the perceptions between those two groups in relation to their experience of professional development, their experience of quality assurance practices, and their experiences giving feedback on teaching, learning, and assessment. The academics from the Australian-based universities were significantly less satisfied with their professional development and with the quality assurance practices than their counterparts in the partner institutions. Although in relation to professional development, not many people were very satisfied. Academics from the partner institutions were much less satisfied than the Australian academics with their ability to give feedback on teaching, curriculum and learning practices to subject coordinators or to other members of their teaching team. But there were striking commonalities. There were they were almost identical, both groups, to the extent to which they thought their curriculum was internationalised, with both groups feeling that there was a lot of scope for further internationalisation of their curriculum. They were also very similar in what they said about the importance of communication and relationships. All of them wanted more opportunities for face-to-face communication or verbal conversation and dialogue, rather than relying purely on email for communication. They're the significant differences and commonalities. Sorry, I forgot to flick the... In the qualitative data, effective communication, connections and relationships based on respect and recognition were seen as critical for quality teaching, learning and assessment practices in transnational programs. So based on this analysis of the survey and the interviews, with all the participating teaching teams in the professional development, we focused on building collegial relationships between all of the team members and increasing communication, interaction and dialogue. We aimed at trying to create a sense of belonging to a transnational teaching team. We used participatory action learning processes with the teams from different disciplines. The teams were very diverse. They consisted of the subject coordinators or unit conveners across both sites, lecturers across both sites, and the tutors from both sites, and then members of the project team facilitated the processes. They were very diverse in cultural and linguistic backgrounds, in their experience teaching in transnational programs, in relation to their age, and in relation to their qualifications. And what we found was that participatory action learning, or PAL, afforded the team members the opportunity to extend their practices through interacting with multiple new peers who brought different perspectives to new work situations. So PAL enabled the transnational teams to be what Bowd calls learning conducive sites. To enact the PAL processes, we depended on distance shrinking technologies. So we had regular video conferences and workshops to enable the team members to build relationships and improve aspects of their teaching and learning together. This slide suggests that video conference is the next best thing to being face-to-face, and it's meant to be easy. In contrast, our experience, it was more often like this. Facial features would disappear regularly. Strange video conference rooms would infiltrate our meetings. And so our project, exploring transnational issues, regularly experienced transnational issues. Each team designed, implemented and evaluated their own PAL projects. The two most common issues that the teaching teams began to work on was assessment parity, or what Sadler calls calibration, and also internationalisation of the curriculum. Very quickly, once the teams had met and started working together, their attention focused on how to build and extend opportunities for their students to interact, connect and share perspectives. Some of the teams used blogs and Twitter to great effect to do this. Another team used an online simulation. Others uploaded group presentations onto YouTube and provided peer and self-feedback, the students did, using Moodle discussions. And another did intercultural work-based projects with IBM, and they used video conferencing, Adobe Connect and Prezi. That comment by a sessional staff member is really typical. In fact, a lot of the tutors involved in the Australian-based universities, and even some of the full-time lecturers, didn't know until they did this project that the subject was even taught transnationally. So, and interestingly, of the 750 students that participated in our transnational teaching survey, the majority of them suggested that the potential benefits for being in an internationalised degree program were under-realised, and they requested more opportunities to interact and learn with and from students at other sites. So our research concluded that realising the benefits for students from the intercultural engagement and the expanded learning afforded by internationalised degrees is really only possible if their teachers, work together, interact with one another, and develop a sense of belonging to a transnational teaching team. So our project suggests that professional development for transnational teaching focused solely on providing upfront workshops in decontextualised locations or online modules to increase the individual expertise of academics involved is not the most effective approach. Our project suggests that professional learning and quality enhancement are more likely to occur if these principles underpin practice development, so professional development. So professional learning and quality enhancement should be collaboratively designed and negotiated, practice-based and situated in the everyday work of the team. It should build trust and a sense of belonging, involve all members of the team, especially to be inclusive of the sessional staff. It should address the intercultural nature of transnational teaching, harness the diversity of the team, promote distributed leadership, and be flexible and context sensitive. This is the sorts of things that our project suggests. So, based on the work and the resources developed by the transnational teaching teams and their students, like other OLT projects, our project has created a free web-based curriculum and resources toolkit. That toolkit comprises 8 toolboxes, and the issues canvassed in each of those toolboxes are listed there, so I won't read them out to you. There's also case studies that outline what the participatory action learning projects did. They discuss what worked well, what the major challenges were, the areas for improvement, and they contain links to the resources developed during the professional practice development. There's also pedagogical resources for if you're wanting to facilitate these processes in your own institutions and partner institutions. You'll also find video clips and written resources to assist both students and staff to get started using these distance shrinking technologies like blogs, Twitter, video conference, Adobe Connect, and online simulations. So we hope that the resources will assist you in creating a sense of belonging amongst the members of your transnational teaching teams, harness the diversity of the teams to maximum benefit, and avoid the pitfalls of the FIFO fly-in, fly-out model. If you're interested in discussing transnational issues further, please join us for a one-day symposium next Monday in the 16th of June.
Thank you indeed, Lynne. Our second presentation will be given by Dr. Pierre Benckendorff from the University of Queensland. Pierre.
Thanks, Tim. This project, it was part of the strategic priority projects that were funded by the OLT last year, and it's in the technology enhanced learning cluster along with Bev's project on credentialing and curating badges, and so our project's quite focused, as you can see, on online business simulations. And I'd like to just start by talking about what we think some of the challenges are in business education, before then talking about our project and giving you a couple of examples of the simulations we're looking at. So some of the challenges, and by no means an exhaustive list, most universities, the business school is one of the largest, if not the largest school in a university. That means we've got large cohorts, often large percentages of international students, and that creates some challenges around how we develop skills in those students. So the question for us is how can we develop students, give students an opportunity to develop and practice, particularly what we call managerial skills. When we look at the conventional types of assessment in business schools, reports and essays may be good at developing knowledge and getting students to explain that knowledge, but fairly limited for developing managerial skills. Business plans and case studies, a bit better, but not particularly dynamic or interactive in the sense that students can see the results of their recommendations or ideas. Work integrated learning experiences are becoming more common, but because of the limitations that employers have when they host students, most of the skills I would argue that students are developing there are more operational skills rather than the managerial skills like decision making and problem solving, which is what we're training them for. Exams, in my experience, often, again, very content and knowledge based, and having recently done a few MOOCs, I would make the same comment about MOOCs. So what can we do with these business students? What models have we got that may be scalable, that provide large cohorts with a learning experience where students are able to sharpen their managerial skills through regular feedback? Now, to answer that question, we've put together a video of some comments or reflections of members of our project team, so we're going to see if this actually works. So far, so good. So that just brings through some of the voices of other people on the project team. You can see they're quite enthusiastic about the use of simulations, and that really got us thinking about what it is that students do learn, and then we thought, well, these simulations are interesting, but perhaps the learning has more to do with how educators wrap pedagogies and assessment around the simulations, and that's really at the heart of this particular project. So there are a number of deliverables for this project. The first one is to conduct an audit of online simulations in business education. We're in the process of interviewing educators to see how they use them, to look at innovative practice, to look at the learning strategies and also some of the challenges in using simulations. We also would like to talk to decision makers like heads of school, because these simulations are usually commercial packages which have a cost attached to them. We are in the process of trialling a simulation learning barometer for benchmarking the learning outcomes and also levels of student engagement. And all of these resources will be put onto a project website to provide resources for educators. So this is the enduring legacy of the project. If you are looking to embed a simulation into your course, hopefully this will provide a useful resource. And there are some national workshops which we've planned later in the year. So that's a quick overview of the project. The brief for this particular session was also to do a demo. I'm not going to do a live demo in the session because there's not enough time. I think Sid and his team are going to try and do that for you next. But I thought I would just show you briefly a couple of the simulations we've been talking about. So one of the simulations that we've used is an aviation management simulation where students work in teams to establish and run an airline. And so, like a lot of the business simulations, students need to make operational and strategic decisions about the type of airline they want to run, the location of that airline, the types of routes that they're going to run and the schedules, what types of aircraft they want in their fleet and how they're configured, the types of service they offer, and decisions around staffing, human resources and marketing. In my case, airlines, the teams compete in the same space as the lecturer who also runs an airline, as well as some artificial intelligence airlines. This particular simulation is asynchronous. The students make decisions and make changes in the simulation and then wait for a batch or a cycle to run. It's only after that batch or cycle is run that they see the results of the simulation. And they have access to a range of metrics and performance data that they can use to evaluate their performance and then repeat the cycle based on the outcomes. So here's a screenshot of the main part of the airline online simulation. As you can see, it's not a pretty immersive 3D Second Life type environment. It's a very utilitarian kind of business type environment, data-driven environment. Students navigate through the menus at the top and down the side to access different aspects of the simulation. So, for example, they can adjust staffing levels, salary levels, the number of staff that they employ. They can make decisions about marketing and how they want to spend their marketing budget. And then, as I said, there are a number of different reports that they can access to give them an idea of how well the airline is tracking against all the other competitors in that space. So this is an income statement after a batch has been run, which provides them with details about the income and expenses for their airline. The airlines in the system are also ranked. So this is a ranking of airlines from the most recent semester. And you can see that there are a range of different performance measures that come out of the simulation that can be used to rank the performance of different airlines, mostly market share or financial type indicators. But this project is particularly interested in the pedagogy and assessment, so I thought I would talk very quickly about the pedagogy and assessment that's wrapped around that particular simulation. In my case, the course is a flipped classroom approach where the content for the courses are delivered through video lectures, and we then meet once a week for 2-hour workshops, and those workshops are used more for interactive activities. The assessment, a lot of the assessment revolves around the simulation where students initially propose a business, an airline, and that's done as an in-class presentation. As the simulation gets underway, after a year in the simulation world, the virtual world, they need to write an annual business report, again developing a set of skills with reporting business performance. The actual performance of their company in that simulation is also worth some marks, and they also conduct peer evaluations of other people in their team. The rest of the course includes quizzes to verify that they've picked up the knowledge that we need them to learn as the foundation, and there's also a reflective piece where they reflect on their learning throughout the semester. So that's one model. Another model used by another colleague in the team is the HOT simulation. This one is not airlines but hotels, but as you'll see, a very similar setup where students manage in the team a virtual hotel. This simulation's used much more widely around the world. There's a picture there of a class using it, and most students now are using laptops and tablets to access these simulations. This project is really about the online space and online simulations. So the need for computer labs that are specially set up and specially designed has disappeared to some extent. So in this particular simulation, students get a lot of background information about the whole hotel that they'll manage. They then get access to market research, sales reports, financial reports. They use that information to make decisions about what kind of business they want to run, what cycle simulation. They get some metrics to judge their performance. The assessment, very similar. There are a series of quizzes. The performance of the hotel, the financial performance is also evaluated. There's an individual report, and in this case, a final exam. So that's just a very quick overview of two simulations. There are other simulations that look at retail and manufacturing in the marketplace that we're also looking at. I want to finish just with a brief project update. We're 6 months into a 12-month project. We're very keen to engage with people in the room who may be from business faculties or business schools, there's a quick update of where we're up to. We will have a website up and running hopefully by the end of the month, so don't use that address yet, it's not ready, but write it down if you're interested. More importantly, if you'd like to engage with the project community, get involved with the National Roads Show, or be informed about what's going on, drop us an email. The email address is on the screen there. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you indeed, Pierre. So when Ellen Joyce steps down, we know who the Qantas board can contact. Our third speaker and the third project and case study is Dr. Helen Farley from the University of Southern Queensland. Helen?
Sorry everyone, just bear with me. I just want to make sure I don't talk too long, which we're in danger of. So can I start this? No, I'm not. Okay, so now for something completely different. I'm going to talk about a series of projects we're doing, one of which is OLT funded, looking at taking digital tools into correctional centres for incarcerated students. At any one time, USQ, or the University of Southern Queensland, where I work, has about 200 enrolled students in our tertiary preparation program. And that's a program for people getting into undergraduate programs through non-traditional means, like they mightn't have finished school or whatever. We also have about 100 prisoners in undergraduate programs as well, and they're doing a series of programs, whether it be business, ironically, or sometimes law, things like that. We don't let them into nursing or teaching, but we do let them into a wide variety of courses. Okay, so the From Access to Success project is a project actually funded by the OLT, which we're very grateful for. And that's actually about developing a version of Moodle that doesn't use the internet at all. Because without exception, across Australia, people in prison don't get to access the internet for very, very obvious reasons. That's often what got them there in the first place. So this comes from an unfunded project that we began called Pleiades, and just bear with me, Pleiades stands for Portable Learning Environments for Incarcerated Adult Distance Education Students. Thank you. And this comes from a time when we had an executive director who wanted all of our projects named after constellations. And Pleiades is actually the name of the constellation, the Seven Sisters. Unfortunately, most constellations are called like NXX3945, which makes it tricky. Now, we were unable to get funding for Pleiades because obviously incarcerated students aren't a very sexy topic. No one wants to know about them. Everyone thinks that prisoners are in prison for a reason and then perhaps they shouldn't be helped. And we found it just impossible to get funding. So we had to fund it ourselves through that aforementioned generous executive director. So what we did is we tried to develop a version of Moodle that didn't use the internet, and it was kind of a proto-standalone Moodle. And we also used ebook readers as well. And we used ebook readers that couldn't connect to the internet. They were Sony PRS 300s, which were obsolete even at the time we bought them because they didn't connect to the internet, didn't have SD cards, and had to have integrated batteries. If they didn't have integrated batteries, then the prisoners could make tattoo guns out of them, which is not what we were about. So it was really it was like a project where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, including the prison relocating. I mean, how could you ever put that into a risk assessment? You just wouldn't do it. And interestingly, the prison's about to move back, and interestingly, it still wasn't in my risk assessment. And it was just like a really time-consuming thing to do. For us to get Moodle onto the Correctional Centre server, we had to send 2 people from ICT Services down to the Southern Queensland Correctional Centre, which is about an hour or so's drive away, and they would spend the day getting the education server ready, installing a new operating system onto it, putting the instance of Moodle onto it, putting the course onto it, and all of that. And it just wasn't viable to do. There are 13 correctional centres in Queensland that, under this government, that may go up dramatically, of course, but at this point there's only 13. And we certainly couldn't be sending those people across the state. So we had to find a better way to do it. So we applied for some OLT funding, and fortunately we were successful in doing that. What we weren't so lucky with is that we couldn't actually afford from that money to continue our e-book reader trials. There just wasn't enough money to do that, even though that proved to be feasible and they were popular with the prisoners and all of those sorts of things. We couldn't continue with that side. So we had to start another project called the EEE project. Now that's not quite as tricky as Pleiades, but it always tests me to figure out what those 3 E's are. And it might be e-learning, empowerment and e-readers, I think. So the EEE project, and that went to 5 correctional centres, and I really had very little to do with that, but that ran in tandem along with the From Access to Success project, which is running now. Okay, I should just go back here. We were so overwhelmed with our success with the From Access to Success project that we actually applied for some more money from the federal government, from the Higher Education Participation and Partnerships program. And at the end of last year, we actually won $4.3 million to take standalone Moodle to 13 correctional centres across Australia. E-readers, though they were good, we realised they weren't the way of the future, so we decided to look at tablets. We also found out just a couple of weeks ago that we won some more HEP funding for a project that we're calling From Paper to Pixels. And what that project is about is actually fixing up all of the processes around USQ so that when we do develop SAM and when we do have the tablets, that it's actually going to work and it's going to be sustainable. And it's going to work beyond the end of the OLT project and beyond the end of the Making the Connection project. So I'll do a spot quiz on the names of all those projects at the end to make sure you've remembered what they all are. So what's our motivation for doing this? I mean, we have 300 students at any one time in a correctional centre, but we have 28,000 students overall. So the number of incarcerated students we have is actually quite small. But we do have a lot of students who don't have the internet. In our tertiary preparation program, 44% of students actually wrote that they can't access the internet readily. So that's 44%. That's an awful lot. That's not our undergraduate students, they're those tertiary prep students. USQ has a larger number than average of low SES status background students. And so these students come from this pool. But like every other university, we're moving away from paper. You know, we're in the digital age, all our learning's online, all our courses have an online presence, all the rest of it. We used to have a printery that would print out books and blocks of printed text and send them hither and thither across the globe. And that's expensive and difficult to do. And so our institution, along with every other institution, has decided to move away from paper. And there's a project called 115, standing for Semester 1, 2015, where none of our courses will have any paper-based materials whatsoever. So anyone who's relying on those is now completely without them. We're also extremely reluctant to be sending out any CDs or DVDs or flash drives or anything else. All of our material will be online and that's where it will be accessed. So that's 300 incarcerated students that we won't be able to accommodate. It's those 44% of TPP students who say they can't access the internet. It's going to be those people who live in countries with poor ICT infrastructure. We have 28,000 students, 10,000 of those students are actually international, and most of those are on campus. They're not all overseas, but we do have a lot that are overseas, in Africa and in Asia and in those sorts of places that don't have good internet. We also have lots of students in remote areas of Australia, and we often hear about students who have to drive 2 or 3 hours until they get, some internet signal so they can actually download their course materials for the week. 61% of the world's population don't have access to the internet. And even though they're not all USQ students, sadly, a lot of them are potential USQ students. And what are we going to do with those people? We're all very enamoured with MOOCs, and I've heard lots of discussions of MOOCs, and they're the be-all and end-all, or they're nothing at all, depending on who that you're talking to. And I've heard lots about credentialing and badges, and I found out that I'm actually badge curious, something that I didn't know about before I got here today. But all that presupposes that you have access to the internet. And like I said, these people don't. A lot of people don't. Incarcerated students. Now, we have about 30,000 prisoners in Australia. That number's growing, and the percentage is growing. And that's largely due to the tough on crime stance that a lot of our Conservative governments are taking. We're getting more prisoners than we know what to do with in Queensland, which is great for my project, but probably not good for anything else. And then we also have that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are overrepresented in that mix. They're 4% of the population, 25% of the prison population, or 26% of the prison population. In certain jurisdictions, they're 50% of the prison population. Now, if I can give or help encourage them to earn a post-secondary qualification, upon release, these prisoners are 40% less likely to reoffend. So that's in the literature over and over again. If we can do that, we can save a lot of money, we can give something back to the communities these people are coming from, and we can, make the government happy and make more space for new prisoners, and most notably bikers in Queensland. So there's a real reason why we should do it. Now, standalone Moodle, and I know that the learning management system isn't the be-all and end-all of everything. So before the Twitterati say, why would you inflict a learning management system on these people? I know it's not the be-all and end-all, but it's better than what they've got now, which is nothing. We have to automate the installation of that because it's just too time-consuming to send our people out to do that. So we've actually managed to do that. We can now put it onto a DVD, send it to a correctional centre, they can put it into their server, it auto-installs. We have to have the automatic harvesting of assessment because that's also time-consuming. That's also difficult to do. At the moment, the education officer has to print that out, post it by snail mail, which now will only be delivered 3 days a week to USQ, so I hope they think ahead with that one. We need a way to automatically harvest that. And we also want to automatically harvest that usage data as well. That's something else we need to do. We've achieved the first of these, the automating the installation. The other two we're yet to achieve. It's also about repackaging Moodle courses, because at the moment what happens is Moodle draws all of its content from a repository, and at USQ that's an Aquila repository. And obviously we can't fit that onto a DVD to send down with them. So we've got to repackage those courses and bring those resources together with the Moodle course. And we've got to also be able to automatically install the server environment as well. And in case you couldn't tell, it's a Red Hat software that we're using. I barely know what that is. So we've achieved that too. We can put that onto a DVD, we can send that down to the correctional centre and they can automatically install that. And so we can do that very easily. We now don't have to send those people down there. We still have the issue of collecting the data though, but still to be done. So what do the students think? Well, they like it and then they don't like it. It's a bit of everything. Some of them have been in there so long they haven't even seen a mobile phone and don't know what a mobile phone looks like. Some of them have never used computers before. So to be able to use them now is like intimidating and frightening and scary, but some people really, really like it. One of the things that we didn't anticipate is that the students actually only get 2 hours in the computer lab to actually use the standalone Moodle. And often what they prefer to do with that time, rather than use my elegantly constructed standalone Moodle, they prefer to actually type their assignments, which they've handwritten in their cells. And at first I thought, oh, isn't that lovely? You know, they're so committed to their studies, they want to present it really well by typing it and not giving in handwritten copies, which they are allowed to do, but it's actually the spell checker on Word that they're after. It's got nothing to do with the presentation at all. So the results are mixed, but what we did gather from this is that standalone Moodle's not enough. We need a tablet or we need an e-reader, something that they can take back to their cells and use. What they did really like, though, was the self-marking quizzes that gave them immediate feedback on their work. So they really did like those. So what's next is the $4.3 million Making the Connection project, and that scares the willies out of me because that's huge. And, you know, I've got 3 new staff members waiting for me when I get back who are going to be working on that project. The Paper to Pixels project, looking at those USQ processes to make sure that we can embed standalone Moodle there so that it will live beyond the end of the project. And Queensland Correctional Services are actually really impressed by what we're doing and they're stoked at our commitment and all the rest of it, and they really would like us to put it in all 13 of their correctional centres, which is more easily said than done. But anyway, we aspire to do that and exceed the goals of our project. So I think that's about all I've got to tell you. Except, of course, that I really love the OLT for giving us money, so I'm really pleased they did that, and also the HEP Fund as well. These are the people who took the great photos that I was able to use. And that's the project website if anyone wants to have a look or drop me an email and get involved. So thank you.
Thanks, Helen. I won't make the, well, I might make the pun remark about get involved in the project from the inside. Our final presentation is from a couple of colleagues at the University of New South Wales, so it's Sid Newton and Russell Lowe. Gentlemen, if you want to come up, you're doing a tag team?
Joint process.
So I'm Russell Lowe and this is Sid Newton, and we're going to do what we shouldn't do, which is a live demo, because often these things will break under this kind of scrutiny. But actually this will introduce us. What we've got is a real-time virtual environment that's actually a modification of a computer game engine. The computer game engine you can download for free, and you can utilise the assets that we've created to totally transform it. So essentially what we're doing is taking something off the shelf and modifying it. So rather than start from scratch, actually let me turn down the workers a little bit, they're making a bit of racket in the background. So rather than start from scratch and develop a game engine like this, which is probably in the order of 20 to sort of $60 million, depending on which engine you're talking about, to develop, we take advantage of the ability to modify existing ones by stripping out the tanks, the weapons, and the creepy characters, the dragons and such like, and replacing them with our own toys, hammers and such like. So we've got we've got a inbuilt sort of slideshow to go through just to prove that we are serious. And what I'm going to do is sort of just walk around the environment, and Sid, as we sort of encounter these slides, Sid is going to just a little bit away from what we're doing here, and more speculative about what we're seeing coming in the next few years, and what we're sort of are playing with around the fringes of this kind of technology. So the first thing I'd like to sort of demonstrate is this two sites we've got here. This is scaffolding, some artificial intelligence-driven characters. Here's another site, and I can just step through the construction process of the scaffolding, so that people can understand the elements and the order that they actually go together, and they're all physicalized. So once they're in existence, we can move around them. In fact, the point behind this one is that if you look down to the left there, you'll see a little kickboard, and the one on the other side there doesn't have that. And as my mate comes along here, you can see what's going to happen. He's going to kick that off and knock my other mate on the head. So now you've learned something. Put a kickboard on your scaffolding, and you'll be you won't scone your mates. So it's a simulation of a physical environment with particular situations. But what's not being simulated is my actions and my movement, and where I go, and the decisions that I make in the environment. If we want to go back, and if I want to go back through the stages again, I can do that just at the pace that I'm sort of most comfortable with learning. So the next sort of slide that I wanted to bring up was the Oculus Rift. So, Sid.
Thanks, Russell. And I think someone raised earlier about why don't you run more of these conferences as you would a teaching session. This is a demonstration of team teaching, and probably why it goes wrong so often. We had a plan that we would talk about different slides at different stages, and that's already fallen apart. So we're just going to rumble through this, and hopefully we'll get to the points we want to make. First of all, it is an OLT-funded project. We're currently working with the University of Western Sydney, University of South Australia, and University of Adelaide in implementing this within architecture and construction programs as a way of enabling the teaching of students about a whole range of different things that go on in this situation. And so the first distinction we wanted to make was between simulation programs and what we're calling this, which is a situation engine, which is about creating situations that allow students to experience the sorts of things that we are no longer able to provide them in reality, because we're no longer able to take them on site visits, and we're not able to allow them to construct things and deconstruct things in workshops and labs and so on. And so when we get to this particular slide, it's really just pointing to the nature of the technology. Again, at the moment, we've got someone driving the system using a mouse. You're looking at it through on a projected screen, but the Oculus Rift that you see illustrated there is a new technology that's arrived that allows you to become much more immersed. The immersive qualities of this technology now are quite exceptional. you've got the sound there, you've got the AI, and with this kind of technology, you're able to enter into the space and look around the space, and what you see is from the perspective of that first-person user.
I'll just jump in there just really quickly. If you haven't heard of the Oculus Rift, it was a Kickstarter project. A 21-year-old asked for $150,000 worth of funding to make immersive wraparound goggle set, and because he couldn't buy one off the shelf, ended up getting $3.5 million from the Kickstarter community, basically free money from you and me, from me and Sid in particular, and we bought a couple of them, and it went through a couple of rounds of venture capital funding after that, and most recently, and I think really illustratively, it's been bought by Facebook for $2 billion. And so that's after a year, and he's 22.
He's a happy chap.
So the point about that I want to raise is that the Oculus Rift is about immersive virtual reality, and it was set up as a way to experience these kind of 3D spatial environments. Facebook buying it, they don't do games. And if we go back to 2000, Lev Manovich said that the 3D spatial immersive environment is not only the way to look at spatial data, but the way that we should experience all data. And so what Facebook's spending $2 billion on this is saying Lev Manovich was right, and here's $2 billion to prove it.
And just along with that, the idea of wearing those goggles is one thing, but of course, and it's unusual because you don't typically see people wearing that kind of device, but with with Facebook buying it, with Google Glasses coming along, this sort of technology is going to become very commonplace. It will be very pervasive. And so, whilst at the moment it seems as though you need to be a particular expert to operate and run this, I'm certainly not a gamer. I don't play these sorts of games, but I've developed a lot of technologies around teaching and learning, and understand how you start with a problem, which is we've got an issue around situated learning and how we create experiences, and this just happens to be a technology that we've been able to apply to that. So this one is just trying to illustrate the adaptive nature of the technology. So we're calling it a situation engine, and those situations are created by populating the game environment with different kind of physical attributes, with different artificial intelligence. We can draw information from the internet and link into other software. And whilst at the moment we've got a particular instance of the game available, an instance of the situation, each individual user, each time we use it, could be populated with very different situations. So in another implementation that we've got, which is about urban construction of domestic buildings, each time you go in there, it's a different scenario, a different set of problems being presented to students.
Sorry, Sid, I'm just moving you along.
And the other thing about this technology are the analytics that one can get from it. You can pull a great range of different information. The little images there are just to demonstrate that in an immersive sense, we can see what people are physically doing in the game, and they can control their movements physically through the game by physical movement. We can look at the connectivity that the routes they're taking through the game. And that little device at the top is another little thing that we're using at the moment. If you think it's a bit strange, people taking data on their heartbeat and so on, this is the next wave of HCI interfaces. It reads brain patterns and reports on emotional states of people, and it's used to control games, but also provides the sort of feedback that you'd expect into this kind of the big data sets that's being created. So we're not only able to generate the physical elements, but we're also now able to connect to the emotional and the real. Connectivity, well, again, it's a very connected space, and we're beginning to blur virtual reality with augmented reality, and the notion of reality is a particular issue at the moment. We've got a student looking at that whole concept, and whilst Russell just demonstrates how these things are actually simulated quite well in the physical space. The connectivity side of the issue is, again, coming to the fore with new technologies such as the sensor scanner, where the iPhones at the moment are used to take photographs, and everyone's taking photographs of the environment, but they're now providing little attachments that will scan, scan the laser scan the environment as you move around. And so everyone's going to be scanning reality. That reality, those scans can be brought into the game. These were kind of CAD models, but the models themselves can be scanned images of spaces. The Opera House has just been scanned. And so the content of the video game can be the actual and current content of reality as people are moving around in spaces, scanning each other, scanning the physicality of the space they're in.
Huh. Epic fail there. Oh, here we go. So we've got a bit of a situation that's related to some fire, and and that guy. Sometimes it happens. Oh, it did get him. Oh, avert your eyes. This guy's a bit. Not quite sure where the blood's coming from, but the funny thing is that happens differently every time. And the last sort of slide that we've got to share with you is this notion that it's experiential, that we're trying to embed people into an environment and give them a, and like people have been talking about, an authentic experience of being there. So while Sid was talking, I was driving the crane to lift a skip and put it onto the top of the platform there. One of the things that I'd like to sort of raise is that currently I'm using a mouse and a keyboard, and I'm hitting some keys to make slides sort of appear and reappear and to trigger the beginning of a series of events. But the stuff that we've been looking at with not only gaming software but gaming hardware and peripherals with the Kinect is to try and immerse people into the environment in an intuitive and kind of natural way. The closest we get, well, actually we've been doing some tests on that. It's and using the emotive as well to try and modify the environment based on people's states of mind, but also with things like operating cranes and operating vehicles, they're quite a disassociated set of activities from the human body anyway, so we can actually model them and train people to drive them in ways that are actually exactly like the crane in reality. And that's some of, you can see Kinect gesture demo. You can go to the website and look at videos showing all of these things. Some of the things we haven't shown, I'm using one machine. It's nice to see it on multiple screens, but we've got a multiplayer. Let me just fly up to here.
We need it finished.
We've got a multiplayer demo as well, so you can get multiple people in the environment in the same place. Thank you very much.
So just one word, if you Google Situation Engine, you'll find the website. We haven't got a URL up there, but if you Google Situation Engine, you'll find where we are. We'd love to hear from you. I know there are pockets of this sort of work going on around Australia, but it'd be good to connect in, certainly across different discipline areas. Thanks very much.